Hi, Michael. Thanks
Hello,
for accepting
Rosina.
the challenge of doing a Zoom interview with me.
Not a challenge. A treat.
The synergy we have is that we both focus on the same segment, B2B business owners and leaders, but we come with very, very different offerings. So we want to get to know you and know what you do and how you do it and why you do it, if that's okay.
That's okay. I love it.
Okay, let's get straight into it. In 2 minutes, going to keep you to that, Michael. 2 minutes. Tell us a little bit about Michael Friedberg.
Well, 2 minutes, 50 odd years in 2 minutes, bit of a challenge. Look, I've had a career that really is like a cork on the ocean. So, finished school, went overseas, did lots of jobs overseas, came back, ran a restaurant, thought I need to grow up, go did a marketing degree in Lincoln and Christchurch. The last year started my own company. And then that was a web design and sort of interactive marketing company. It was the 90s. And then that company got purchased by a company in Christchurch, which got purchased by another company in Christchurch. And then Telecom bought it, was Computerland. At that point, I thought, I'm going to go to IBM because if I'm going to go work for big, I'm going to go try and do something a lot bigger. And then over the next 14 years, did a series of sales and marketing and commercial and SaaS and cloud and technology roles all across what we call the emerging markets. So lots of change. Then I came out, did some fractional work, went and ran an agency called Swaytech, and then here we are now with Flux. So I think if I sum it up, I've always been open to new things, but also been able to just look at what's coming next. Where might the ball be? Let's go and have a look at that in the context of sort of business and commercial. So it definitely was unplanned, but it's served me well in terms of just being able to come and work with companies and talk about how they take advantage of what's going on in them around them in the world.
Wow. Restaurateur to, IT guru to, service industry. You've got it all going, Michael. You've got it all going. And I think you actually summed that up in less than 2 minutes. So well done.
Yeah, no problem. Always up. Like to keep things succinct, right?
So when working with B2B business owners, as you do, what do you see as the challenges they are facing right now in 2025?
It's a really good question. There are lots of challenges that we're all facing. I think I'm going to answer that by there are two kind of scenarios that we see B2B businesses being operating in. I'm going to just quickly talk about that and then the challenges I see that's kind of universal. There are a group of B2B companies that are mature, quite sophisticated, but they are often stuck because the world's moved around them. The sales team may not be able to find and win as many customers as they had. Technology's changed. There's a lot more uncertainty and they haven't built that muscle at how to move and adapt quickly. The second is those companies where there's a lot of momentum already. Things are going well. They're moving quickly, but they're going, well, I could do this. We could do this. What do we do next? And how do we align the resources to take advantage of that? So the challenge then for these kind of companies is both of them is going, well, what's our legacy strengths? What are we good at? Why did we start the business? What have we been good at over the last X number of years? And how do we apply that right now to be able to drive some sort of commercial outcomes? And then it's about the challenge of doing that at pace and building that resiliency inside the business. We see a lot of B2B companies, when you're doing well, there's the systems and the processes and the operations and the structure is often groaning under the pace and the change that the business needs to operate at. So how do they build resiliency to be able to cope in that, what we call the messy middle, at being leaning into the chaos a little bit more and actually taking advantage of what that chaos and change means rather than trying to push it away or put it into a box or try and control it, which we can't right now because the world is just, it is just one thing we know is that change and chaos reign supreme at the moment. So it's those who can overcome that and build that into how they operate. That's where we're seeing a bit of an unlock. And that's where we're seeing sort of those companies be successful at overcoming that challenge.
So we go from one end of I don't see any options to the other end, I see so many options.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it,
You
it is.
know?
And and both of them are like, but what do we do next?
Mm,
That's the big
the
unlock.
big question.
That's
Yeah,
the big question. Yeah.
yeah. And that's when we call Michael, huh?
That's where you call Flux. And look, the name, when we started the company in January, my co-founder and I, to sell it again, not our first rodeo, but what we saw was the year ahead and the years ahead would be full of change. And what we wanted to do was be able to build and help companies build strategy, but just resiliency and be able to understand, make sense of it, and be successful in it. New Zealand companies, we are number 8 wire, we're quick. We don't overthink things, but sometimes our businesses get so complicated. So that's exactly right. We try and, kind of build that resiliency in as part of what we do from a human level. Because look, Rosina, you'll know these are good people running these companies. They're doing the best there, that they can, but sometimes it's hard. And it's certainly been hard the last couple of years.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's kind of fatiguing hard.
Yeah.
Mm.
You see a lot of, I was with a CEO recently who said, quote unquote, my team is depressed. Like they're so tired. It's been backing out of COVID, straight into, that uncertainty. And now we've got tariffs. Now we've got so much
Mm.
change. Businesses are driving, but the old playbooks and the old ways of working, you can't just keep working harder and expect there to be a different outcome. And that's tough, I think. And it's interesting, I'm seeing more opportunity for coaching, to looking at CEOs and going, you've got to have the energy for the change that you need to do to make your business successful. But you as a human, like you actually need to be, what do you want? Are you happy? What's going on in your life? As a CEO, we can't be successful. We can't lead change and uncertainty and lead teams unless we are ourselves resilient and whole. And I think that's something I'm becoming a lot more aware of as I get a little older.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Which leads beautifully into our next question. You've talked a lot here about building resilience when dealing with change. So why is it so important to B2B leaders?
I think our B2C colleagues, I think they are, well, I think they have it easy, but I've never worked in B2C. So, I'll say that that's just a biased view. But what they are really good at is being very receptive to changes in the market, right? They're very sales and marketing. Often FMG is marketing led. Drop in a brand campaign and some advertising, and there'll be a shift in market share. What's going on? They're listening all the time. So B2B is not that good at that. Sales cycles might be 6 to 18 months, right? And so we're very, it's very pragmatic, very rational. The planning strategy is once a year. And so what we're seeing now is that change is constant. I love that quote from Charles Darwin, which is that it's not the most intelligent of the species that will survive. It's those that can adapt. 100% we buy into that. So, but that takes resilience. That takes, kind of learning and understanding, how do you make sense of the world? How do you make sense of the world? Look at what's coming, look at your role in it, thinking about then what your next move might be. How do you position the company? How do you help your sales teams to be able to suddenly sell in a different way because there's a competitor? And so now your value has to be described differently, right? That's different than what it was last month.
Mm,
That's messy. How do you come up with a shift in a go-to-market where you're not certain on everything, where you might have modeled it in a spreadsheet, but the reality will be very different? I think a lot of managers, and look, I was at IBM for 14 years, put myself on this boat. When I came out of IBM, business cases, button down KPIs, measure it to within an inch of its life. So if we're going to do it, we know how it's going to work. It doesn't work like that in the real world. A strategic bet is just that. We make, we look, we weigh up the odds, we look at our businesses, the market, and we place our bets. That's frightening and terrifying, right?
mm,
But then what happens next? we get it a bit right? Do we need to just shift it a little bit? We have, our leaders have to be comfortable in that messy middle. And so what we're trying to do is help leaders, CEOs in particular, go, just worry about this next thing here. All the rest is noise. And yes, you'll have to deal with it at some point, but right now where you're at, these are this and this. Do these two things, and watch them play out. And then when we now know what that piece is doing or not doing, now we can think a little bit wider, or maybe we need to go back and change that. So trying to build the resiliency around dealing with change and harnessing it. And I think, the tariffs in the US are a good example. I think what Donald Trump has done to help us is he's got us used to change. If you think about when the tariffs came out, and then it was 50%, then it was 10%, then what's he done overnight? And we were, oh my God, pulling our hair out, right? Now, oh, he's done that. All right. Okay. Well, tariffs are 50% now. Okay. Well, that does have an impact, but we've thought about that. And so we're actually building some of the resiliency to the fact that New Zealand is at the behest of the sort of global trade winds, but we have to be able to help these companies do that in a way that helps them to be successful and think about their business, their strategy in a different way where change is going to be constant. I mean, how do you, do you see that as well? You're in that kind of brand and digital activation layer. And so you're obviously working with your clients right in the market at where the rubber hits the road. What are you seeing about how quick they are to make changes based on what goes on in there around them?
Yeah, look, I think because you deal directly with the market, you get immediate feedback. Well, not immediate feedback, but you you certainly kind of guess, yeah, gee, that campaign didn't go well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there are more longer term metrics when it comes to brand, but you're still getting you're at the coalface, right? And if you're doing your job well, you're asking your customers as you're going along, at regular intervals. So you're getting that stuff. So yeah, I think the thing is knowing when to change and just knowing when to knuckle the change, which means you just watch the change. You don't need to react to the change. And I think that's kind of the hard part, because as you say, Donald Trump has got us all geared into this changey thing, but it's like, so when do we just observe, and when do we get in there and actually change is probably when we've got all this feedback. And sometimes, some of the feedback may not be what we want. So I think that's some of the dilemma that marketers are dealing with.
I think so. And I think it's hard when that feedback is not, no one wants to hear it. It's real. And I think what we're seeing is the successful companies at the moment, they've built market-facing teams where that feedback is being internalized, listened to, and made sense of. Boards want to hear that. Boards love it when you go in and talk to them about what's going on in the market with the customers, right? But to your point, the resiliency then comes in with, I've heard that feedback. Our product's not landing for these reasons. We think it's pricing. Okay, well, we're going to need to address that. What do we do next? How do we test that quickly without spending 6 months remodeling all our pricing, in which case the competitors have gone on? That's the muscle, right? It's like, how does this system talk to each other? And how is there resiliency built into the humans to feel like it's not a failure if the campaign didn't work because it didn't land, because a competitor entered the market at the same time? We didn't know that, but now we do. What have we learned? Right, let's move on quickly. How does that help us?
And I think that's that resilience, but moving on quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. Some companies can't do that and some can, but have to be able. And it's interesting. We've been talking, so once we do some strategy work with a client, we'll then often try and put in the right people and the processes and systems to be able to make that work. But a big part of that is about allowing the execution layer to have what we call structured autonomy. So you have to be able to make a decision quickly within your general swim lane so you can move. But you can only do that if you're clear on the strategy, if there's alignment across the business and you're empowered to do that. We had a client that we worked with when the first round of tariffs came up. Their team in the US responded overnight with pricing shifts. that were then put in place the next day. And I was like, that only works because they were clear on their strategy and there was alignment across the team. It was a really lovely example. And I think we need more of that in New Zealand companies. And these are New Zealand, but they had a team in the US. So they were a little bit more aware of some of those changes and used to operating like that.
Mm, that's a good
That's fair.
example. Wow, that's
Yeah.
a really good and a good outcome.
It was. We woke up. I was in there that day in a fractional role, and then talking to the CEO, and it's like, "This is what we've done. We're now checking it. They're finished for the day now, and now we're doing some analysis, and then the next day they made further tweaks. But yeah, it's important. I think if you've got the right people, you need to empower them within their own world to be able to make those decisions. But they have to be clear on the strategy. They have to be clear on where they're playing and how they're playing to win, and what that looks like for their own part of the business.
Mm.
Not for the faint
So
heart.
we may have, yeah, I think we may have covered it, but let's actually just go through it again. What two attributes would you embed into every B2B leader? What would they be and why?
Yeah.
So what two attributes would we embed if we could put a chip into them? What
Look,
would they be?
we'll take resiliency off the table. We've plugged a
Yeah, because we've done that
resiliency.
one. We've
We've done
done that
that one. But I think we talk a lot. So just to take a quick step back, when we came up with the idea of Flux, we were looking into the market of going, what do B2B companies need this year? This is December, January. What are they going to need this year? What's not been working? Where are we seeing the gaps? And the biggest gap was in strategy, but more than that, it was in how do business remain adaptive?
one.
Okay. Let's think about what that means. That means being in tune and aware and open to what's going on around you and then adapting quickly. So we talk a lot about adaptive strategy, but actually it's about being adaptive. So that's definitely the number one attribute we see inside businesses. Not not dying in a ditch over a strategy or an idea, but being open to adapting with what's going on in the market and what is needed for you to be successful, for your strategy to either play out as true or false, and then for you to make changes. That is very easy to say, but when you're running a $5-10 million company, you feel like you have to follow this set playbook and you feel like you have to follow the plan that you set. And that's not the reality of where we play today.
Mm.
But the first one is about being adaptive. The second is, I would say, um, what we call actionable leadership. So, you talked about before about being fast and momentum. That's, I think, pace inside B2B businesses right now is probably one of the most important pieces. You need to be able to operate at pace. That requires leadership that is very action orientated. So at Flux, we have a bias for action. So whenever we come up with plans and thinking, it's very biased in actual outcomes and action. So we often see leaders who are hugely collaborative. And look, again, I'd point at myself here. I am a very collaborative leader at an IBM, operating in the matrix. We'd have a meeting to come together and begin to form ideas. But how do you make that actionable? And so now we're saying, to B2B leaders, think about what actionable leadership looks like inside your business. How does every meeting end in an action and an outcome that can be moved forward, even if it's to reconvene, not just talk? And then how do you know at the end of the week that your leadership team has driven actions that have moved the business forward in some way? So those are the two, I guess, secret weapons for B2B companies. B2B leaders is about, like an attribute of being, and I don't want to use the word agile because I think adaptive is different. So
Mm.
agile is being about quick to move. That's great. But adaptive is about adapting what you have. So it's a step each, forward or to the side and then how is your leadership team exhibiting what we call actionable leadership? What does that look like? And I think what we're seeing now is the rise of, I don't know, gig economy, fractional leaders means that you can get people inside your business who are very action orientated, and they often will skills transfer and show, existing leadership teams of different ways to work, and that could be a really nice way of powering that up. I know that's kind of off the topic, but we're seeing that resonate when we place these, who what we call our actionable leaders inside companies, who then model and, skills transfer to that team or what it can look like. And that can be really helpful.
Mm.
Because how do you know? Like, how do you, if you're listening to this and you're going, great, how do you how do you bring that to life? So often we need help, other ideas, people talk, conversations, etc. So I hope that this does help spark that.
Mm. Yeah, and I really hear you when you talk about pace, actions, resilience, adaptability.
Yes,
Those are kind of like the shopping list, right? That's what the chip would have on it,
yes, it would.
yeah, yeah.
It would upgrade now.
Upgrade now.
Gotchas, wish it was that easy.
Right.
Um,
You took the words right out of my mouth, Michael. I was just going to say that.
Great minds think alike. And look, in the day to day, and I know this myself from being when I ran Swaytech, because, the CEO there, the day to day, and that was, you just get stuck in the doing, right? But someone's got to take a step back. And I actually, as I'm talking to you, it's like, well, if I had an upgrade, what would it look like? And maybe that's a great question to
Mm,
ask
mm,
someone who's listening to this. If you're a CEO, you're listening, what is the upgrade that it will help you the most in your business?
mm.
I
Yeah.
like that. Good thought.
Good question, even for me.
And I mean, are you, well, I think we're all like that. And how do you see, from your perspective, and again, just playing in that brand and bringing that brand to life, especially, at the, where the rubber hits the road and with the market and the customer, what are you seeing that's missing inside your clients that you're helping fill, or, that you're seeing that these companies often don't have it inside their businesses?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things I would add, and this probably defies everything in terms, this is probably more so with brand, and it defies, the whole, data strategy, insights kind of approach, is I think there is always a role for intuition and instinct and just knowing,
Yes.
just knowing and not
Yes.
always having to prove,
Yeah.
like in lots of respects, I just know what's going to
Mhm.
make the world of difference to our customers' lives. I just know. I don't need to do a bunch of research to work it out. You
Don't
know?
you got a chat GPT to tell
Yeah.
you?
No, I just know the things that for them is going to make a world of difference to them and their business.
Mm.
Just as a segment, not if I think loosely about B2B brands, just as a segment, and and I think instinctively we can build that. If I think about at our level, we can build that into a really good campaign.
Mm.
We can build that into something because when you know them that well and you know what their levers are and you know what their drivers are and you know what they need, it's just it's a feeling, and taking that and turning it into some form of creative campaign to market or whatever. I think sometimes the tougher the tougher conditions are, the less business leaders are relying on their own instinct, and the more they want all this, evidence and proof and things, and that instinct, that gut, that kind of thing is, I know that's right,
Mm.
goes a little. And when we
Because of,
talk about brand, it really starts to affect that area.
yeah, I totally agree. And I think only experience gives you that.
True, true.
Walk the walk, fallen off the path, misstepped, learnt. That's what allows you to be able to have that intuition. And I worry that, I was talking to a CEO recently who's just hired a marketing person, and he was telling me what they're going to do. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. This person's had 2 years experience and they're fired up on ChatGPT. They're using all the AI tools. I was like, so hold on. So what they're doing is actually really important for your business, and they're doing a lot of work, but it's going to be just, there's no intuition. There's no knowledge. You can't expect that because that person hasn't walked that path. They've
Mm.
never done that before. Now, ChatGPT will tell them what to do and a great way to do it. But it was interesting when the CEO, was kind of talking to them. Can you tell me, I want a bit more about that? I'm really intrigued by that. there was no depth because they didn't know, because they've been told it. They hadn't learnt it.
Right.
So
Right.
I think there's something just for us to think about with the more junior people, but you can't, yeah, that intuition, I like that. And I think that's, you also got to think about a lot of the CEOs of B2B companies will have survived the global financial crisis. They've been through some of these things before, so they actually will have some intuition and muscle, but maybe we need to remember what that's like.
Mm. And I guess trust it, you know?
Mm, yeah.
So, yeah. So look, you just touched upon there, the hot topic of AI in business. I don't think we're gonna get out of any interview without talking about it. Um, yeah. Any, like, thoughts about that? Thoughts about AI in business as it is today? Because it could change tomorrow, and I know how
Yeah.
quickly all these things change.
Look, I think it's a game changer, right? I think what it's showing, and this is why it's a good segue, AI cannot replace intuition and thinking. It can't be strategic.
Oh, sorry.
It can't do a strategic plan, right? It can't, because strategy hasn't happened yet. And the AIs work in large language models, which are patterns based on what has happened. So we have to remember that. I think secondly, creativity comes from a special part in the brain. Oh, if you just
Yes, I think we've just got a tsunami warning here, Michael, have we not?
we have, look at that.
Does
It was
that say
funny. It went off
something
and
about our interview, Michael?
look at that. And an 8.8 earthquake near Russia.
Right.
Well, okay, there we go. We are reasonably close to the water, but not that close. So I think it's good though. Good that the system works.
It's good that the system, it's, yeah, I thought, oh my goodness, what was that? So,
Well,
did the,
I saw you go off, and then and then that went off there. It was a couple of minutes later. Um, so we will pick
we're
that back
making the
up.
earth move. We're making the
Yeah.
earth move. AI and business.
Yes. Yeah. So talking about can't replace, it can't be strategic and it can't be creative. So we have to be thinking about how it helps us to become more productive and to let us do the things we do well, free ourselves up to do that. I think the challenge we're seeing is you could be a super user as the CEO, the leader, the founder of Energize, but how do you take that into your company? And how do you have an intentional AI strategy and approach that works inside your business? I think we're all struggling with from personal use to business use. So I think there's more to be seen there. I think we have to be playing with it. We have to be experimenting with it. I think it's done a great job at um, as forcing marketing through a bit of a renaissance to be really focused on those things you talked about, the customer, what's different, how do you show up, and how do you create a moment of attention in a world where we're so overwhelmed with content now. There's a lot of AI sludge out there, so it's back to brand, back to storytelling, right, which is a very human, can be powered up by AI. So I think what we'll see and what we are seeing is two things. All the big in 5 years, it'll be the big platform players, all the AI small bits will be interwoven into your Microsoft or your Google or your HubSpot. We're already seeing that now. So we'll see more consolidation. That's where it will play out, where you've got multiple AI agents sitting in a platform where your data can be leveraged. And I think we'll see the rise of the agent. We're beginning to see, saw a CV recently of a marketer who comes with two agents. They've built an agent to help them with brand, and they've built an agent to help them with content. And so it's almost like you hire me and I've got these two agents that will help me power up. It's like that we will see more and more individuals have their agents. And so I
Wow.
think there's an opportunity of what that looks like. So that's not a commercial, but it's a differentiation and a productivity kind of hack that we're seeing. And it's getting easier and easier to do that. You do have to have a wee bit of nous. I think it's hard to know where to start. And I even know that for Flux and myself, so many, and we're using AI all the time. Where do you start? So honestly, you start with what's the biggest pain in the ass you have, and how can I use AI to make it better? That's what we say to all of our clients. And then, for goodness sake, don't trust it until you've trained it. We had a CEO who we used ChatGPT to write the board report and then just sent it off and got slammed. And I said to him, would you let an intern write that and not check it? And he said, no. So it's the same with AI. So I think we're still working through that, but it's a game changer, whether we like it or not, it's there. So we've got to lean in.
Mm. I think you told me it's not about, it can work in the present, but not in the future,
Yeah, that's right. That's
so, yeah, and I kind of think it's more of an enabler in that way.
Yeah. And
Mm.
look, you can do research. We just worked with a client who had analyzed 25 annual general reports from their target audience companies and used AI to analyze and look for trends and insights across 25 documents. That took probably about an hour to set it up, to do the prompts, and then obviously 30 seconds to get the outputs and tweak it. Now, a human, arguably, that would take
Mm.
days and wouldn't do a great job, or they'd miss stuff. So that then gets fed into part of the strategy, like, great, here's some stuff that we've now seen. What else can we see? So it can power it up, but you still need a human to make sense of it. What does it mean? How do
Yes.
you apply it, the context to the real world? How do you interrogate it? I think there's a lot of, it's fun, but it's, buyer beware. It's not a catch-all and a help-all for everything.
Mm. Wise words. Hey, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate your time. I've learnt a lot about B2B leaders from a different aspect, so thank you. And I hope people viewing this will understand a little bit more about Flux B2B.
Yeah, thank you, Rosina. I enjoyed the chat. We always have good chats. Uh, like you, I hope someone finds some useful nuggets in there. So brilliant.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.